I used to believe in certainty the way other men believe in God. For 20 years, I was absolutely sure of three things. Claire loved me, Ethan was a good kid, and our family was unbreakable. I built my entire world on that foundation, never questioning, never doubting. After all, why would I? I'd done everything right. 22 years ago, I met Claire at a housewarming party thrown by my college roommate. She was laughing at something in the kitchen, head thrown back, completely unself-conscious, when she tried to sing along to some terrible karaoke happening in the living room, butchering every note of Don't Stop Believin'. I knew I was in trouble. She caught me staring and shrugged, grinning. "I never claimed to be talented," she said with that infectious smile. We spent the rest of that night talking about everything and nothing. She wanted to travel the world. I wanted to build things that lasted. She dreamed of writing a novel. I was studying civil engineering. We were different enough to be interesting, similar enough to understand each other. When I drove her home at 2 a.m., she kissed me goodnight on her front porch, and I felt like I'd won the lottery. Our courtship was simple and perfect. Weekend hiking trips where we'd talk for hours about our futures. Quiet dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants where we'd share dessert and plan imaginary vacations I proposed on the same trail where we'd had our first real conversation about marriage, sunset painting the sky orange and gold. She said yes before I finished asking the question. Our wedding was intimate, 50 people in a small chapel, followed by dinner at the country club where Claire's parents were members. No drama, no family feuds, no expensive disasters, just two people promising to love each other forever, meaning every word. Our honeymoon was a week in a rented cabin in the mountains. No room service, no tourist attractions, just us and a fireplace, and the absolute certainty that we'd chosen right. When Ethan was born 3 years into our marriage, everything clicked into place. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny perfect person who was half me and half Claire, and feeling like my life had found its true purpose, I became obsessed with providing for them. I worked harder, took on extra projects, climbed steadily from junior engineer to senior engineer to project manager. Every overtime hour, every missed dinner during project deadlines, every sacrifice was worth it because I was building something. Security, stability, a future where my family would never want for anything. Claire stayed home with Ethan, and it was our choice, our partnership. She was a natural mother, patient with his tantrums, creative with his entertainment, fierce in protecting him. She managed our suburban house like a general managing an army, everything organized and comfortable. I provided. She nurtured. It worked. 17 years later, our life had settled into something I thought was unshakable. Ethan was now 16, a good kid, not perfect, but solid. He played basketball, got decent grades, had friends who weren't criminals or drug addicts. He respected us, helped around the house without being asked, talked to us about his life family dinners most nights, weekend yard work where he'd help me trim hedges and complain about homework. Claire's book club every Thursday, my poker nights twice a month with the same group of guys I'd known for a decade. Nothing extraordinary, but that was the point. We were stable, reliable, safe. The American dream in suburban form, a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a mortgage that was almost paid off. Just last Tuesday, we'd sat around the dinner table, all three of us, and everything felt perfectly normal. Ethan was talking about an upcoming basketball game, excited about playing a rival school. Claire was laughing at one of my stories about a miscommunication with a contractor who'd somehow managed to order twice as much concrete as we needed. I watched them both, my wife of 20 years, my 16-year-old son, and felt that deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've built something good. I never looked too closely at the details. Why would I? Claire seemed happy. She had her routines, her friends, her interests. If she was quieter sometimes, if she seemed distracted occasionally, I chalked it up to normal life stress. Everyone goes through phases. But there were things. Small things I'd dismissed because they didn't fit the story I was telling myself about our marriage. Claire's phone was always face down now, and she'd developed a habit of taking it with her to the bathroom. She'd bought new workout clothes, expensive ones from brands I didn't recognize. There was a sudden intensity to her attention to her appearance that seemed different from her usual care about how she looked. I told myself she was feeling good about herself, wanting to stay attractive and healthy. What husband complains about his wife wanting to look her best? I never suspected, never even considered the possibility that the foundation I'd spent 20 years building was already cracked. Wednesday started like any other day. I kissed Claire goodbye, reminded Ethan about his game on Friday, drove to work expecting another routine evening. I had no idea my son would walk through the door that afternoon with information that would detonate my entire world. I thought 20 years of loyalty earned me the same in return. I was about to learn how little my sacrifices meant. Wednesday should have been routine. The municipal infrastructure project I'd been overseeing for 3 months wrapped up ahead of schedule, rare in civil engineering, where delays are more common than completed work. My supervisor sent the whole team home at 2 p.m. with genuine congratulations. I actually felt optimistic driving home, thinking about maybe tackling the gutters I'd been putting off, or just enjoying a quiet afternoon in my own house. I pulled into our driveway at 2:45 p.m., noting Claire's car was gone. Probably shopping, book club preparation, maybe meeting a friend for coffee. Normal things. I changed clothes, made myself a sandwich, turned on the news. Comfortable solitude. Ethan walked in at 3:30, and I immediately knew something was wrong. My son's face was troubled in a way I'd rarely seen. Shoulders tense, the easy confidence he'd inherited from Claire completely absent. He dropped his backpack like it weighed 100 pounds and stood in the kitchen doorway, staring at me. "How was school?" I asked. He hesitated. Ethan never hesitates. He's always been direct, honest, quick to share his thoughts. But now he stood there looking like he was carrying something too heavy to lift. "Dad," he said finally, voice careful. "I saw her." "Saw who?" I replied, though something in his tone already made my stomach clench. "Mom. I saw Mom," he answered. The words came out slowly, reluctantly, like he was performing surgery on himself. Ethan explained he'd been cutting through Riverside Park on his way home, a shortcut he'd taken hundreds of times. He'd spotted Claire near the duck pond, standing close to a man I didn't recognize. Not just talking close, too close. "I watched them," Ethan said, and I could see how much he hated having to tell me this. "They kissed. Like, really kissed. And she put her hand on his chest, and they were looking at each other like what?" I pressed, though I dreaded the answer. "Like how you and Mom used to look at each other," he finished quietly. My first instinct was pure denial. Ethan was 16. He was seeing things wrong, misinterpreting innocent friendship, maybe confusing Claire with someone else. There had to be an explanation. 20 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate because your teenage son thinks he saw something in a park. "Ethan, are you absolutely sure it was—" "I took a picture," he interrupted. The words hit me like cold water. Ethan pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly, and showed me a photo that made my blood stop moving, blurry but unmistakable. Claire in her new blue jacket, standing intimately close to a tall man in an expensive coat. Their faces were turned toward each other, bodies angled in a way that spoke of familiarity, comfort, routine. "I wrote down his license plate," Ethan continued, voice getting smaller. "I looked it up online. Isaac Kane. He's some kind of real estate developer, divorced twice. I found his business website and some news articles about him buying properties downtown." I stared at my son, this boy who'd somehow become a detective in the space of an afternoon, and felt something fundamental shift in my chest. The careful structure of our life, the certainty I'd wrapped around myself like armor, started cracking. "Ethan," I said carefully, "where exactly did you see them?" "By the duck pond." "But Dad, that's not all. I watched them get into his car, a black SUV. They drove away together," he explained. The room felt like it was tilting. I pulled out my phone and called Claire, forcing my voice to sound normal, casual. She answered on the third ring, sounding bright and cheerful. "Hi, honey. What's up?" she said with that familiar warmth. "Just wondering how your day is going." "What are you up to?" I asked, watching Ethan's face. "Oh, just shopping. You know how it is. I'll be home soon. Love you," she replied brightly. Every word felt like sandpaper against my soul because I could hear it now. The artificial brightness, the performance. How long had she been performing for me? When I hung up, Ethan was watching my face carefully. "You don't believe her either," he said. "Show me that license plate number again," I requested. Ethan rattled off the digits he'd memorized. I pulled up our family's Find My Device account on my phone, something we'd set up years ago for safety, so we could locate each other in emergencies. Claire's location appeared on the map, and my world collapsed completely. The Grand Regency Hotel, downtown, expensive. The kind of place where people go when they want privacy, when they don't want to be seen, when they're doing things they can't do at home. "Dad?" Ethan's voice seemed to come from very far away. I stood up, jaw clenched, decision crystallizing in my mind like ice. "Get in the car," I ordered. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To get proof she can't deny," I answered grimly. Ethan looked at me with something between relief and terror. I think he'd been carrying this weight alone, not knowing if he should tell me, hoping maybe he was wrong. Now he knew he wasn't wrong, and he could see in my face that everything was about to change. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you." I pulled him into a hug, felt how much taller he'd gotten, how much stronger. "This isn't your fault," I told him firmly. "You did the right thing. You saved me from living a lie." But inside, questions were assaulting me like physical blows. How long had this been going on? How had I missed it? What else had I missed? How many times had Claire come home from her shopping trips and kissed me with another man's taste still on her lips? My son had just handed me a grenade. Now I needed to decide where to throw it. I drove with singular focus, but my mind was churning through scenarios. Barging into that hotel room and screaming would accomplish nothing except giving Claire room to manipulate, minimize, make excuses. She'd cry, claim it was a mistake, promise it would never happen again. She'd make me the villain for not trusting her, for spying, for bringing our son into adult problems. I needed evidence so clear, so undeniable, that no judge, no therapist, no mutual friend could ever question what had happened. I needed to end this completely, with no wiggle room for her to claim innocence or victim status. "We need to stop somewhere first," I told Ethan. "Where?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Flower shop," I replied. Ethan looked puzzled until I explained my thinking. Hotels don't give out room numbers to strangers, but they make exceptions for special deliveries. Flowers are the perfect cover, a thoughtful surprise for a guest. It was simple, brilliant in its obviousness, and completely legal. At Bob's Flowers, I bought an arrangement that cost more than most people spend on groceries. White roses and lilies, elegant and expensive looking, the kind of bouquet that suggests celebration or romance. The florist wrapped it beautifully, added a card that I left blank. "This is really smart, Dad," Ethan said with growing admiration as we drove toward downtown. I glanced at him and saw something in his face that bothered me. Excitement, anticipation. He looked like a kid about to watch an action movie, not a son about to witness his family explode. But I pushed the thought away. Ethan was just processing this differently than I was. He was hurt and angry, too. He wanted justice. The Grand Regency was exactly what I'd expected. Understated luxury, the kind of place where wealthy people conduct business they can't do in offices. Marble lobby, soft lighting, staff trained to see nothing and remember less. I approached the front desk with the bouquet, smile charming, voice smooth. "I have a delivery for Isaac Kane. Could you tell me his room number?" "It's a surprise celebration," I said confidently. The receptionist, a young woman named Lisa according to her name tag, hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't give out guest room numbers policy," she replied apologetically. I pivoted smoothly. "I understand completely. Would it be possible for you to escort us up? I'd hate for him to miss this surprise, and I want to make sure it's appropriate," I suggested. Lisa considered this, then consulted with her manager, a tired-looking man in an expensive suit who emerged from an office behind the desk. After a brief conversation, he nodded approval. "Room 412, Lisa announced. "I can take you up." In the elevator, I handed my phone to Lisa. "Would you mind recording this? It's such a special moment and I want to capture his reaction," I requested with manufactured enthusiasm. She agreed, charmed by what she thought was a thoughtful gesture. I knew exactly what I was doing, creating a witness, a third party who could testify that what was about to happen wasn't staged or edited. Lisa would be my proof that everything was real and spontaneous. The elevator climbed slowly. 4th floor, down a carpeted hallway to room 412. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Beside me, Ethan was breathing hard, hands clenched into fists. I knocked on the door, firm, confident. 3 knocks, footsteps inside, a pause, then the sound of the security chain being undone. The door opened. Claire stood there in a white hotel robe, hair disheveled, face flushed from recent activity, skin glowing in a way I recognized from 20 years of marriage. Her expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and pure terror in less than 3 seconds. "Thomas? Ethan? What are you doing here?" she stammered. I didn't answer. I pushed past her into the room, Ethan right behind me. Lisa followed, still recording, confused but committed to her role in what she thought was a romantic surprise. Isaac Kane sat on the bed, shirtless, expensive watch still on his wrist, looking annoyed at the interruption. He was younger than me, better looking in a polished way that suggested personal trainers and expensive grooming. The kind of man who wore cologne that cost more than my monthly car payment. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, standing up aggressively. I dropped the flowers. White roses scattered across expensive carpet. I crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Isaac by the arm before he could react. "Wait, man, what's going on?" He started to protest. My fist connected with his jaw. The crack echoed through the room like breaking wood. Isaac crashed into the wall, eyes wide with shock, blood already starting from his split lip. What happened next wasn't brawling. It was execution. Every strike was deliberate, controlled, purposeful. I grabbed him by the shoulders and slammed him back against the wall, punched him in the stomach. When he doubled over, I brought my knee up into his ribs. Ethan, without being asked, grabbed Isaac when he tried to slip away, held him in place while I worked. My son's face was blank, focused, like he was helping me fix a broken appliance instead of beating a man unconscious. I kicked Isaac in the stomach, then the ribs, then again. He curled into himself, whimpering, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This man had touched my wife, had been inside my wife, had laughed at my ignorance while he destroyed my marriage. "Stop! Thomas, stop!" Claire screamed, trying to pull me away, but I shrugged her off like she was weightless. She might as well have been a stranger. I looked down at Isaac, face bloodied, lips split, clutching his ribs, making small, wounded animal noises. He was pathetic, weak, a man who could only steal other men's wives, never build anything of his own. "If you ever come near my wife again," I said, voice ice cold, "I'll finish the job." Isaac nodded frantically, unable to speak through his pain and terror. I turned to Lisa, who had stood frozen in the doorway through the entire beating, phone still recording, eyes wide with shock. She hadn't stopped filming. She hadn't run. She'd witnessed something raw and terrible and captured every second. "Thank you for the video," I said calmly, taking my phone back. "I really appreciate your help." She nodded, completely speechless. I walked past Claire without looking at her. Ethan followed silently. Behind us, Claire collapsed beside Isaac, sobbing, begging me to wait, to talk, to let her explain. But I didn't look back. There was nothing to explain, nothing to discuss, nothing left to save. In the car, Ethan sat silent, staring at his hands. I glanced at him and saw something I didn't want to acknowledge. A tremor, pallor, the shock of what we'd just done together. But I pushed it aside. We'd done what was necessary. Justice had been served. I had the evidence. I had the rage. Now I needed to make sure she lost everything. I drove straight from the Grand Regency to Margaret Sinclair's law office. Margaret was my attorney, sharp, ruthless, the kind of divorce lawyer who treated family court like warfare I had called ahead. She was waiting. "Show me what you have," Margaret said without preamble as Ethan and I settled into the leather chairs across from her desk. I played the video. Margaret watched Claire answer the door in the robe, Isaac on the bed, the confrontation, the violence. When it ended, she leaned back with an expression of predatory satisfaction. "This is more than enough," she declared. "Clear adultery with video documentation and a third-party witness. You'll keep the house, the savings, your pension. She'll get nothing." "How fast can we move?" I asked. "I can have papers filed tomorrow morning. She'll be served within 48 hours, Margaret replied efficiently. "Given this evidence and the fact that your wife has no independent income, has no proof of financial contribution to marital assets, and will be the clearly at-fault party, your position is unassailable. No alimony, no division of assets, nothing." "What about Ethan?" Margaret asked, turning to my son. "You're 16, old enough to choose your living arrangement." "I stay with Dad," Ethan stated firmly. Margaret nodded approvingly and began drafting preliminary paperwork while we waited. I signed initial documents that would set Claire's world ablaze. Margaret handled everything with surgical precision, explaining each form, each filing, each strategic move. "I estimate 60 days to finalization given the evidence," she concluded. Ethan and I left the office and went home. I ordered pizza, and we settled on the couch in our living room, the house I'd paid for with 20 years of work. While we waited for the food, I changed all the locks. Ethan helped, working quietly and efficiently. We ate pizza and watched basketball highlights in companionable silence, two men preparing for siege. At 9:15 p.m., Claire's car pulled into the driveway. Ethan and I heard her get out, heard her heels clicking on the walkway, heard her approach the front door like she still lived there, like she still belonged. She tried her key. It didn't work. She tried again, rattling the handle. Nothing. Then came the pounding, desperate, angry, demanding. "Thomas! Ethan! Open this door right now! I live here! You can't lock me out! I'm still your wife!" she shouted. Ethan walked to the door and spoke through it, voice cold and too adult. "You destroyed your marriage, Mom! We don't want you here!" "Ethan, please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please let me in. We can talk about this," she pleaded desperately. "You made a choice," Ethan replied coldly. "Now live with it." I joined him at the door, keeping my voice calm and final. "Divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning, Claire. Don't contest them. It'll be faster and easier for everyone." "Thomas, I have nowhere to go. Please, I love you. I love both of you. It was just one time," she cried. Even now, even caught with overwhelming evidence, she was lying. "Not our problem," I responded, turning up the television volume. Claire sobbed on the porch. She pounded again, begged, screamed that she had rights, that this was her house too, that we couldn't just throw her out like garbage. She cycled through every emotion: rage, bargaining, desperation, self-pity. She called me controlling, abusive, cruel. She called Ethan ungrateful, manipulated, turned against his own mother. She promised to end things with Isaac, swore it had been temporary insanity, claimed she'd been depressed and confused. All lies, all manipulation, all irrelevant. For 2 hours, Ethan and I sat on our couch watching basketball highlights. We didn't move, didn't respond, didn't acknowledge the woman crying outside like she was a stranger having a breakdown in a public place. Finally, the crying stopped. We heard her car start. Headlights swept across our front windows as she backed out of the driveway and drove away. I felt victorious. I'd taken the first steps to erase her from my life. But when I looked at Ethan, I saw something unsettling. His expression was cold, almost empty. The boy who used to laugh at terrible jokes now looked like someone who'd learned to shut something off inside himself. "You okay, bud?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah," he replied, but his voice was flat. "We're good. We're going to be fine." I told myself he was right. We were good. We were going to be fine. I thought revenge would fix everything. I didn't realize I was breaking something else. 60 days passed. The divorce was finalized exactly as Margaret had predicted. The video evidence was so overwhelming that Claire's court-appointed attorney advised her not to contest anything. She signed the papers. She got nothing. No house, no savings, no alimony, no claim to my pension. 20 years of marriage dissolved with her left financially destitute. Ethan formally chose to live with me. The court didn't even require a hearing. Ethan was 16, articulate, and his reasons were documented. He told the judge he didn't want contact with his mother. The judge granted it. The scandal spread through our suburban community like wildfire. Someone from the Grand Regency, maybe Lisa, maybe another employee, talked. Soon everyone knew. Claire Bennett was caught at the luxury hotel with Isaac Kane. The video didn't circulate publicly, but the story did. At the grocery store, people whispered and pointed. At church, conversations stopped when Claire appeared. She tried to attend one of Ethan's basketball games. Parents turned their backs. Isaac Kane left town within 3 weeks. His business partners distanced themselves, his clients heard rumors, and his reputation, already damaged from 2 divorces, completely imploded. He relocated to Arizona, presumably to start over where nobody knew his name. Claire, desperate and alone, followed him there. She had nowhere else to go. No job. 18 years as a homemaker had left her with no marketable skills, no money. The divorce had cleaned out her access to everything. No friends. The social destruction had been total. She tracked Isaac down in Phoenix, begged him to let her stay. He refused. He wanted nothing to do with the woman who'd brought him a beating and public humiliation. Claire ended up in a cheap apartment, working retail at a big box store, earning minimum wage, completely alone. I heard this through mutual acquaintances. I felt satisfaction. She'd made her choice. Now she was living with the consequences. But the satisfaction was thinner than expected, because Ethan wasn't okay. I watched my son over those 60 days and saw disturbing changes. Ethan had nightmares. I heard him wake up gasping. He stopped hanging out with friends. His grades slipped from B's to C's. He quit the basketball team, claiming he'd lost interest, but I suspected it was because he couldn't handle the attention, the whispers, everyone knowing what his mother did and what he'd helped me do. One night I found him sitting in the dark in our living room, staring at nothing. "You okay, bud?" I asked gently. "I held him down," Ethan said quietly. "While you beat him, I helped you hurt him." I sat beside him. "He deserved it," I replied firmly. "Maybe," Ethan answered, voice hollow. "But I keep seeing his face. I keep hearing Mom crying on the porch. I know she's wrong. I know she destroyed everything, but I keep thinking, I'm 16. I should be worried about basketball and homework, not divorce court and revenge." I didn't know what to say. I told him he'd done the right thing, that exposing the truth was brave, that Claire had brought this on herself. Ethan nodded but didn't look convinced. Ethan started seeing the school counselor. I didn't learn about it until the counselor called me. Ethan had self-referred, expressing difficulty processing what he called family trauma. The counselor recommended a therapist. I agreed, but felt a gnawing unease. Dr. Evelyn Hernandez's assessment, shared carefully with me, included phrases that hit like punches. Premature exposure to adult betrayal, complicated role reversal, potential moral injury from participating in retaliatory violence. I realized, slowly and horribly, that in my justified rage, I had weaponized my son. I'd made Ethan the discoverer, the investigator, the witness, the accomplice. I'd made a 16-year-old boy help me beat a man unconscious and then stand at our door telling his crying mother she deserved to be homeless. I'd gotten my revenge. Claire had lost everything. Isaac had fled. But Ethan, loyal, good, brave Ethan, had paid a price I'd never intended. The son who'd saved me was now struggling with nightmares and guilt and questions about right and wrong that shouldn't burden someone so young. The experience will likely stay with him his entire life, Dr. Hernandez explained during our consultation. Not as debilitating trauma, but as a defining moment that shaped his understanding of loyalty, betrayal, and justice. Ethan had learned at 16 that love could turn to hate instantly, that revenge felt good but cost more than expected, that protecting someone you cared about sometimes meant participating in darkness. I'd destroyed my wife, I'd protected my son, but I'd never asked if those two things were compatible. I still remember Colonel Hayes's words that night. They echo in my mind like a prayer I used to believe in. Marriage is built on one thing above all, loyalty. You stand by each other no matter what. You protect each other. You honor your vows. Without loyalty, you have nothing. Emma and I clinked glasses under the string lights, her eyes sparkling with what I thought was love. The words felt sacred, binding, true. Her father had raised her right, I thought. A decorated military veteran with 30 years of service, the kind of man who spoke in principles and expected the same from others. The kind of man who believed in honor above all else. I believed we had that honor. I was wrong. My name is Nathan Foster. I'm 34 years old, a senior logistics analyst at a freight company. Steady income, reliable career, the kind of man who plans meticulously and values loyalty above all else. I'm calm, methodical, deliberate. The kind of husband who remembers anniversaries and keeps his promises. Emma is 31. Was 31 when our marriage meant something. She hasn't worked since our second year of marriage. I want to focus on us, she said. Those green eyes I fell in love with looking up at me with such sincerity. Build our home, I agreed without hesitation. That sounds perfect. We can make this work. I made enough to support us both, and we lived comfortably in a modest 2-story house I'd bought before we married, my investment in our future. We met at a mutual friend's cookout, bonded over shared love of hiking and old westerns. She'd laugh at the corniest John Wayne lines, curl up against me during Sunday afternoon movie marathons. We dated for 2 years, married in a beautiful outdoor ceremony surrounded by family and friends who believed in us. No children yet. Emma said she wasn't ready, wanted to focus on building our foundation first. I respected that. I thought we had all the time in the world. For 4 years, I believed we had that loyalty Colonel Hayes spoke about. Life was good. Weekend hikes through mountain trails, quiet dinners where we actually talked to each other, movie marathons with old westerns playing on the TV while Emma made her comments about every plot twist. She was my partner, my confidant, my future. I worked long hours but came home to warmth, to laughter, to a woman who seemed content with the life we'd built together. But year 5 brought changes, subtle at first like shadows creeping across a sunny room. Emma growing distant, intimacy dwindling to nothing, always tired, always distracted. She started taking frequent shopping trips that lasted hours with no bags to show for them. Girls' nights became routine, 2 or 3 times a week, always with friends I'd never heard her mention before. Her phone became a fortress. Always face down when she was home, password protected where it never had been before. She showered immediately after coming home from these mysterious outings, washing away traces of wherever she'd really been. She smiled less, touched me less, seemed somewhere else even when we sat together on the couch watching those old movies that used to make her laugh. I noticed everything. I'm methodical by nature, detail-oriented. It's what makes me good at my job. I cataloged inconsistencies like data points in a spreadsheet, receipts that didn't match her stories, perfume that smelled different when she returned home. Laughter I heard through the phone before she quickly hung up when I entered the room. The woman who used to greet me at the door with a kiss now barely looked up from her phone when I came home. Conversations became surface level, functional, grocery lists and utility bills instead of dreams and inside jokes. The life we'd built felt like a stage set, beautiful from a distance but hollow when you got close enough to see behind the facade. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That's not how I operate. I watched. I waited. I paid attention. I treated my suspicions like a case study, gathering evidence, looking for patterns, building a complete picture before making any moves. One night, as Emma slept beside me in our bed that had become as cold as a morgue, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The digital clock cast red numbers across the darkness. 2:47 a.m. I thought about Colonel Hayes's speech from our wedding night. About loyalty. About vows. About what happens when someone breaks them. My suspicions had grown into certainty. The kind of certainty that sits in your chest like a stone, cold and heavy and undeniable. I just needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes before I decided what to do about it. But even then, lying in the darkness next to a woman who had become a stranger, I already knew one thing. Betrayal demanded consequences. And those consequences would be as deliberate and methodical as everything else I did in life. For 4 years, I believed we had loyalty. I was wrong. And by the time I discovered the truth, it was already too late. For her. The phone rang at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd just finished reviewing shipment schedules for the Portland route. And I always checked the clock when completing tasks, a habit that would become more important than I could have imagined. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Is this Nathan Foster?" the voice asked. It was official, clipped, professional in that way that immediately sets your nerves on edge. "Yes, who is this?" I replied. "This is 911 Emergency Services, sir. Your wife, Emma Foster, has been shot. She's been transported to Mercy General Hospital. Her condition is critical. You should come immediately." The words hit me like physical blows. The spreadsheet on my computer screen blurred. My chair seemed to tilt sideways. "Shot? How? Who? What happened?" I stammered. "We'll explain when you arrive, sir." "Please come to the hospital," the operator responded. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, the screen still showing the call duration. 47 seconds. 47 seconds to learn that your wife has been shot. 47 seconds for your entire world to shift on its axis. I grabbed my keys with hands that I forced to stay steady, told my manager there was a family emergency, and walked, didn't run, to my car. Running would have drawn attention, questions, concerned coworkers wanting to help. I needed to be alone with my thoughts during the 20-minute drive to the hospital. My mind raced during that drive, but not in panic. In calculation, shot? Who shot her? Where was she when it happened? Was she alone? The questions formed orderly lines in my head, waiting for answers that I somehow knew would change everything. I pulled into the hospital parking lot at 4:23 p.m., parked in the first available space, and walked through the emergency room doors. The antiseptic smell hit me immediately, that universal hospital odor of bleach and fear and other people's tragedies. Emma Foster, where is she? I asked the receptionist, my voice carrying exactly the right note of worried husband urgency. A nurse directed me to a family waiting area, beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, the kind of room designed for delivering bad news. Minutes crawled by like hours. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, breathing steadily, preparing for whatever came next. Dr. Rivera approached, mid-40s, surgical scrubs still on, exhausted eyes that had seen too much. His badge read, "Emergency Surgery." "Mr. Foster?" he called. I stood. "How is she?" "What happened?" I asked urgently. "Your wife was shot 3 times, chest, abdomen, shoulder. She's in surgery now. The next few hours are critical, but she's alive. We're doing everything we can," he explained. 3 times. Professional, efficient, thorough. I felt my knees weaken appropriately, let confusion and shock play across my face like I was hearing this for the first time. "Who did this to her?" I demanded. 2 police officers approached. Detective Morgan, late 30s, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and Officer Davis, younger, taking notes. They moved like people who delivered life-changing news for a living. "Mr. Foster, we need to talk," Detective Morgan said, her voice measured, serious, giving nothing away. We sat in a private room down the hall. I forced my hands to shake slightly, let my breathing become shallow and rapid, the physiological responses of a man whose world had just shattered. I focused on playing the part perfectly while my mind stayed ice-cold clear. Detective Morgan pulled out a notepad, pen poised. "Your wife was found at a cabin about 40 miles outside the city. We received a call from Colonel Richard Hayes, your father-in-law. He confessed to shooting her and another individual at the scene," she explained. I let my face go completely blank, mouth opening slightly as if the words wouldn't process. "What, the colonel? Why would he—" "I don't understand," I said, confusion evident in my voice. "He told us he discovered your wife was having an affair." He confronted them at the cabin. Shots were fired. The man, identified as Kyle Brennan, 29, was killed at the scene. "Your wife was critically wounded," Officer Davis added. Silence hung heavy in the small room. I let it stretch, leaning forward slightly as if trying to grasp something that wouldn't take shape in my mind. Perfect confusion. Perfect shock. An affair? My voice cracked convincingly on the word. "Emma was having an affair?" Officer Davis leaned forward, pen ready. "You didn't know?" he asked. "No, I had no idea," I replied, looking at the floor and covering my face with my hands in a gesture of complete devastation. "She said she was going shopping, visiting friends. I trusted her completely." "Did you have any suspicions about your wife's behavior recently?" Detective Morgan pressed. I hesitated, a calculated pause that suggested a man reconsidering everything he thought he knew about his life. Maybe she'd been distant lately. "I thought we were just going through a rough patch. Married couples do that, right? I never imagined—" I stopped, shook my head as if the thought was too overwhelming to complete. "Who is Kyle Brennan?" I asked. "We're still investigating his connection to your wife. Mr. Foster, where were you this afternoon between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m.? Detective Morgan inquired. "At work. I was at my desk all day. You can check with my manager, my coworkers, our electronic clock-in system. I had lunch at my desk around 12:30. I remember because I was working on the Portland shipping schedules," I answered. Detective Morgan made careful notes. "We will verify that." "Have you been to this cabin before?" she asked. "I didn't even know it existed," I replied honestly. "Do you have any reason to want to harm your wife or Kyle Brennan?" she continued. I looked Detective Morgan dead in the eye, my expression a mixture of pain and bitter honesty. "I didn't even know Kyle Brennan existed until 5 minutes ago. As for Emma?" I paused, letting genuine bitterness enter my voice. "If what you're saying is true, if she was cheating on me, then honestly, I don't know if I even care whether she lives or dies. But I didn't shoot her. I was at work." "I was always at work?" The detectives exchanged glances. The statement was cold but believable. A betrayed husband's raw honesty, the kind of brutal truth that people tell when their world collapses. Detective Morgan closed her notepad. "All right, Mr. Foster, we'll verify your alibi and be in touch. You're free to go," she announced. I stood slowly, shoulders slumped, hands in pockets, the perfect image of a devastated husband walking through a nightmare. "Can I see her?" I asked quietly. "She's still in surgery." "It'll be several hours," Dr. Rivera replied. I nodded, shuffled toward the door with the gait of a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "I'll be back later." I need to process this," I said. I walked out of that hospital, through the lobby filled with other people's crises, past the information desk and the gift shop selling flowers for healthier relationships, out into the parking lot where the late afternoon sun felt obscene in its normalcy. I reached my car, sat behind the wheel, stared at nothing for exactly 60 seconds, long enough for any security cameras to capture a man in shock. Then my expression changed. The devastation faded. Something colder replaced it. Satisfaction mixed with calculation. They think I'm a fool. Perfect. Let them. The detectives thought they were looking at a man who'd just discovered his wife's betrayal. They were wrong. I'd known for weeks. And what I did with that knowledge, that's what really ruined her life. The drive back from that hospital parking lot transported me into memory as clearly as if I were watching a movie of my own life. 3 weeks ago, when suspicion turned into certainty, and certainty turned into something much more dangerous. 3 weeks earlier, the GPS tracker arrived on a Thursday morning, small enough to fit in my palm, magnetic, undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look. I'd ordered it from a security company website during my lunch break, paid with a prepaid credit card purchased with cash 3 towns over. No digital trail. No electronic footprints. Just a simple device that would tell me where my wife really went during those mysterious shopping trips. For months, things had been wrong. Not just different, wrong. Emma was distant in ways that went beyond tired or stressed. She'd developed new habits, showers immediately after coming home, phone always face down, new perfume I'd never seen her buy. Her girls' nights had become routine 2 or 3 times a week. Always with friends she mentioned by name, but never described, never brought home, never seemed to have actual history with. I'm methodical by nature. I notice patterns. I collect data, and the data was telling me a story I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. The tracker installation took 15 seconds. Emma was upstairs showering, another new habit after her Wednesday lunch with Sarah, and I walked to her car in our driveway, knelt beside the rear bumper, and attached the magnetic device in a spot where it would never be found. My hands didn't shake. My heart rate stayed normal. This was just another problem to solve, another system to analyze. For a week, I monitored her movements on the tracking app during work hours. Grocery store, gym, coffee shop. Everything checked out. Emma's digital footprint matched her stated activities perfectly. I almost felt relieved. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the distance was just stress from her mother's health problems. Maybe marriage had natural ebbs and flows I didn't understand. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, her car traveled 47 miles outside the city limits, deep into rural woods, nowhere near anything Emma had ever mentioned visiting. The GPS coordinates showed her car stationary in what appeared to be wilderness, miles from the nearest town or legitimate business. I checked my watch, 11:43 a.m. My lunch break was in 17 minutes. I informed my manager I was stepping out for lunch, got in my car and followed those coordinates. The drive felt surreal, highway giving way to country roads narrowing to dirt paths, civilization disappearing in my rearview mirror. My mind stayed blank, no anger yet, no conclusions, just cold, methodical focus on gathering information. I parked half a mile from the GPS location and walked through the trees. November air cut through my jacket like a blade. Leaves crunched under my boots with each step. I moved carefully, quietly, like I was tracking an animal that might bolt if it detected my presence. The cabin appeared through the branches like something from a fairy tale. Small, isolated, wood-sided, with smoke curling from the chimney. 2 cars in the narrow driveway, Emma's sedan and a silver pickup truck I didn't recognize. I approached from the side, keeping low, using the dense tree line for cover. Each step was calculated, purposeful, bringing me closer to whatever truth waited inside those walls. I reached the side window, pressed myself against the rough wood siding, and peered through the gap in the curtains. Emma sat on a man's lap on a leather couch. She was laughing, really laughing, the way she used to laugh with me 3 years ago but hadn't in months. The man had his arms around her waist, hands familiar and comfortable on her body like they'd been there many times before. They were drinking wine from glasses that suggested this wasn't a quick meeting but an established routine. She leaned in and kissed him. Slow, intimate. Not the kiss of a new affair, but of established intimacy. Her hands moved through his hair with practiced familiarity. He was younger than me, maybe 28 or 29, with the kind of easy smile that suggested he'd never worried about mortgages or retirement plans, or any of the adult responsibilities that had shaped my life. My vision tunneled. Blood pounded in my ears like a drum. Every muscle in my body tensed with barely controlled rage that threatened to explode outward in ways that would destroy everything I'd built. I could see it so clearly, kicking down the door, dragging him outside by his throat, beating him until his face was unrecognizable and my hands were broken and Emma was screaming for me to stop. but that meant prison. That meant losing everything. That meant I would pay the price for her betrayal while she walked away with victim status, with sympathy, with people saying he couldn't control his anger and she's better off without him. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to be methodical even while rage tried to consume rational thought. I pulled out my phone with hands that shook despite my efforts to control them, opened the camera app, and recorded 15 seconds of video. Emma on his lap, his face clearly visible, the cabin interior recognizable, the timestamp embedded in the metadata. Undeniable proof that could never be explained away or gaslit into something innocent. I backed away from the window slowly, moved through the trees back to my car, sat in the driver's seat while my heart hammered against my ribs. The video sat on my phone like a grenade with the pin pulled, evidence that would destroy multiple lives the moment it was deployed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to drive back there and burn the cabin down with both of them inside. Instead, I thought about Colonel Hayes, about his wedding speech, about loyalty and honor and principles, about a man who had spent 30 years in the military, who lived by a code, who had raised his daughter to value vows and commitment above personal desire. What would the colonel do if he knew his daughter was betraying everything he taught her? An idea formed in my mind, cold, calculated, perfect in its simplicity. I opened my laptop right there in the car, connected to a VPN service through multiple proxy servers, created a new anonymous email account with no identifying information. I attached the video file and typed one sentence: "Your daughter is at this cabin. Thought you should know." I sent it to Colonel Hayes's email address, the one I had from our family group chat about holiday plans and birthday celebrations. Then I deleted the sent message, wiped the browser history, cleared my phone's metadata, removed the GPS tracker from Emma's car during my drive back to work, and clocked in at 1:14 p.m., right on time, perfectly normal. I exchanged pleasantries with coworkers, finished my afternoon reports, attended a 3 p.m. meeting about shipping delays, clocked out at 5:03 p.m. like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just set an irreversible chain of events in motion. That night, Emma came home at 8:47 p.m., smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine and shower soap that wasn't ours. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on another man hours earlier. "Same as always," I replied, smiling naturally, easily. "How was yours?" "Good. Just ran some errands with Sarah. I'm exhausted," she responded, the lie rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. I watched her walk upstairs to shower, washing away evidence, destroying proof, continuing the lie that had become her default mode of operation. Every step she took felt like another nail in her own coffin. I poured myself a whiskey, sat on our couch, and waited for the inevitable. I didn't know when the colonel would act. Maybe that night. Maybe the next day. Maybe he'd try to talk to Emma first, give her a chance to explain. Maybe he'd confront me, demand to know if I was aware of what his daughter was doing. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he did act, I'd be exactly where I needed to be, at work. Innocent, uninvolved, with an alibi no one could break. Back to the present. Over the following week, I was questioned 3 more times. Each interrogation followed the same methodical pattern. Detective Morgan and Officer Davis probing for inconsistencies, testing my story, watching my body language for tells that would reveal deception. I provided calm, detailed answers that never contradicted, never wavered, never strayed from the simple truth. I was at work when my wife was shot. I knew nothing about her affair, and I was as shocked as anyone by the colonel's actions. Detective Morgan wasn't easily satisfied. She was thorough, persistent, the kind of investigator who solved cases through patience and attention to detail. She verified every element of my life. My work manager confirmed the timeline. Nathan Foster clocked in at 8:47 a.m. on the day of the shooting, took lunch at his desk from 12:30 to 1:15 p.m., worked continuously until 5:03 p.m. Security footage showed me in the break room microwaving leftover pasta, sitting at my desk reviewing shipping schedules, attending a brief meeting with the Portland logistics team at 3 p.m. My computer logs showed continuous activity throughout the day. Emails sent, reports filed, system logins every 15 minutes like clockwork. Co-workers confirmed seeing me throughout the day. Jennifer from accounting remembered discussing invoice discrepancies with me at 2:15 p.m. Mark from transportation recalled my input during the afternoon meeting about delivery route optimization. Ordinary interactions that created an unshakable timeline of innocence. They pulled my phone records going back 6 months. No calls or texts to Colonel Hayes except routine family communications, birthday wishes, holiday plans, the mundane digital traces of normal in-law relationships. No calls to the cabin location. No suspicious outgoing messages on the day of the shooting or in the weeks leading up to it. They examined my car's GPS navigation history and recent mileage with a warrant I welcomed. No record of me driving 47 miles out of the city to any remote cabin. My documented routes showed only predictable patterns: home to office, office to home, weekly trips to the grocery store, occasional visits to the gym. Nothing that suggested surveillance or stalking behavior. The search of our home computer revealed browsing history that was aggressively normal. Work emails, news sites, hiking trail reviews, Amazon purchases for household items. No GPS tracking software. No searches for how to hire a hitman or how to make murder look like an accident. No. Digital breadcrumbs that would lead back to anonymous email accounts or proxy servers. The anonymous email sent to Colonel Hayes became a central focus of their investigation. Tech forensics traced it to a burner email account created through a VPN service with multiple proxy layers. The video file's metadata had been stripped clean. No identifying information about whose phone recorded it, when it was taken, or what device uploaded it. The digital trail ended in a maze of encrypted connections that led nowhere. Detective Morgan sat across from me in that same hospital conference room for what she promised would be our final interview. Her frustration was palpable, professional composure cracking slightly around the edges. "Mr. Foster, I'll be honest with you. Something about this entire situation doesn't sit right with me. The timing is too convenient. Your wife is having an affair. Someone sends evidence to her father. He shoots her the same day. You benefit from all of this," she stated directly. I met her gaze steadily, calmly, letting a hint of bitter honesty enter my voice. "Benefit? My wife is in the hospital with permanent injuries that will affect her for the rest of her life. My father-in-law is facing murder charges. My marriage is destroyed. My reputation in this community is ruined. What about any of this benefits me?" I replied. "You're free of a cheating wife without having to pay alimony in a messy divorce. She's clearly the guilty party now," she countered. "I could have just divorced her. I didn't need her shot to end my marriage. Detective, if I wanted to hurt Emma, I had plenty of legal options that wouldn't have involved my father-in-law committing crimes," I responded. Detective Morgan tapped her pen against her notepad, a nervous habit that suggested the investigation wasn't proceeding as she'd hoped. Someone knew about that affair and wanted Colonel Hayes to find out. Someone with access to that cabin, someone who could document what was happening there. "Who would do something like that?" she pressed. I shrugged, maintaining perfect eye contact. "Maybe Kyle's wife, if he has one. Maybe a friend who knew about them and disapproved. Maybe a neighbor who saw cars at the cabin and got suspicious. Maybe someone with a personal grudge against Emma or Kyle. I don't know, Detective. I wish I did. But it wasn't me. I was at work, surrounded by witnesses, doing my job like any other Tuesday," I answered. "Your alibi is perfect, Mr. Foster. Too perfect," she observed. "Would you prefer I was guilty of something? Would that make your job easier?" I asked. "I'd prefer the truth," she replied firmly. I stood slowly, buttoning my jacket with deliberate movements. "The truth is that my wife betrayed our marriage vows with another man. Her father found out about it and went to confront her. He brought a gun and used it. Those are the facts. Whether my alibi is too perfect or just accurate doesn't change what actually happened," I stated. I walked out of that conference room knowing I would never be questioned again. Without physical evidence, without holes in my timeline, without any traceable connection between Nathan Foster and the anonymous email that started everything, I was officially cleared and removed from the suspect list. Emma survived, barely. 2 months in the hospital felt like a lifetime of consequences unfolding in slow motion. 5 surgeries to repair damage to her chest, abdomen, and shoulder. Permanent nerve damage in her left arm that would never fully heal. Scars that would never fade. Visible reminders of choices and consequences. A limp that months of physical therapy couldn't completely correct. When she was finally told that Kyle Brennan died at the scene, 3 shots to the chest. Dead before paramedics arrived, she collapsed into sobs that lasted for hours. The man she thought she loved, the man she'd risked everything for, was gone forever because of what they'd done together. She was told her father confessed immediately, cooperated fully with police, showed no remorse for killing Kyle but profound regret for shooting his own daughter. She was told that Nathan knew everything now, about the affair, about the cabin, about the 8 months of lies she'd told while looking him in the eye every single day. When she was discharged from the hospital, she couldn't return to the house she'd shared with me. I wouldn't allow it. She moved into her mother's house. Linda Hayes, a woman who aged a decade in 2 months, caring for her broken daughter while her husband sat in a cell awaiting trial. I sent divorce papers to Linda's address 2 weeks after Emma's discharge. Clean, simple, uncontested. No alimony demands because Emma was clearly at fault. No asset division fights because she had no legal standing to claim anything. No custody battles because there were no children to complicate matters. Emma signed those papers without reading them, without fighting, without demanding anything. She knew what she'd done. She knew I knew. There was nothing left to fight for. Colonel Richard Hayes was charged with second-degree murder for Kyle Brennan and attempted murder for Emma. His trial proceeded with military efficiency. He didn't fight the charges. Didn't claim self-defense, didn't attempt to minimize his responsibility. His attorney argued crime of passion, temporary insanity triggered by discovering his daughter's betrayal of everything he'd taught her. The prosecution presented the anonymous video as evidence of what provoked him, but could never identify who sent it or why. The colonel took the stand in his dress uniform, every ribbon and medal earned through decades of honorable service. His testimony was precise, unflinching, devastating in its honesty. I received evidence that my daughter was betraying her marriage vows. I went to the cabin to confront her. I saw them together doing what the video showed they were doing. I brought my service weapon because I am a soldier, and soldiers carry weapons. I fired that weapon. I killed Kyle Brennan. I almost killed my daughter. I was wrong to take the law into my own hands. I accept full responsibility for my actions. I dishonored myself, my family, and my years of service to this country, he testified. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 14 minutes. Guilty on both counts. 20 years in prison. No possibility of parole for 15 years. I attended the sentencing, sitting in the back row, silent and invisible. When the verdict was read, the colonel's face showed no emotion, just acceptance of consequences. The same way he'd accepted orders throughout his military career, I felt nothing but acknowledgement. It was over. Justice had been served, not by my hand, but by the natural consequences of betrayal meeting honor. The colonel had done exactly what I'd known he would do, acted according to his principles, his code, his unshakable belief that loyalty and honor mattered more than personal comfort or family politics. And I had been exactly where I needed to be when it happened. At work, innocent, uninvolved, with an alibi that could never be broken. 1 year after the shooting, I sit on my back porch on a Saturday evening, beer cold in my hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The house is quiet, cleaner than it's been in years, organized exactly the way I want it. Finally mine again in every sense that matters. I've been promoted at work, senior operations manager, substantial raise, corner office with windows that face east toward the sunrise. My colleagues know about what happened with Emma, but they don't press for details. They see a man who handled tragedy with dignity, who rebuilt his life after betrayal, who carries himself with quiet strength. They respect my privacy and my professionalism. I haven't remarried, haven't dated, haven't even tried. Maybe someday I'll be ready to trust someone again. to believe in partnership and shared futures and all the things I used to think marriage represented. But for now, I'm content with my routines, my work, my carefully ordered life that belongs entirely to me. Ranger lies at my feet, 65 pounds of German Shepherd loyalty and uncomplicated companionship. I adopted him 8 months ago from a local shelter, a 3-year-old dog whose previous owners abandoned him when they moved. He's been the perfect roommate. Protective without being aggressive, independent without being distant, loyal in ways that humans seem incapable of achieving. We go for long evening walks together through the neighborhood, past houses filled with families and laughter and all the things I used to believe I had. I don't miss it, not the way it actually was, at least. I miss what I thought I had, the illusion of partnership, the fantasy of mutual loyalty, the belief that my marriage meant something real and permanent. I think about Colonel Hayes sometimes, especially during these quiet evening hours when the world feels still and honest. A good man, honorable, disciplined, someone who lived by principles and expected others to do the same. He didn't deserve 20 years in prison, but he made his choice when he brought that service weapon to the cabin. He took the law into his own hands, and consequences don't bend for honor or good intentions. I wrote him a letter 6 months ago, after the appeals process failed and his sentence became final. Simple, respectful, honest. Colonel Hayes, I know you acted to defend principles you hold sacred. I understand why you did what you did. You taught me what loyalty truly means, and I've tried to live by that principle every day since our wedding. I hope you find peace wherever this road takes you. Nathan never received a reply. Don't expect one. The Colonel probably knows or suspects more than he'd ever say out loud. But we understand each other in ways that don't require words or acknowledgement. Emma still lives with her mother, working part-time at a small bookstore downtown, moving slowly through life with her cane and her scars and her nightmares. Linda Hayes looks 20 years older now, caring for a daughter who will never fully heal while visiting a husband who will likely die in prison. Emma tried reaching out one more time. 3 months ago, another handwritten letter delivered to my mailbox. I burned it without reading past the first line. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to explain, nothing that could change what she'd done or what I'd done about it. Kyle Brennan's parents sued Emma's estate for wrongful death. She had nothing to give them. No assets, no savings, just medical debt and physical damage and the ruins of a life she'd destroyed with her own choices. They settled for a handwritten apology letter, tears staining the paper, worth nothing but acknowledgement of responsibility. I finish my beer, set the bottle down gently on the porch railing. Ranger lifts his head, tail wagging expectantly, ready for our evening walk through streets that feel safe and familiar and mine. Come on, buddy. Let's go, I say to him. We step off the porch together into the cool evening air. I breathe deep, free, unburdened, at peace with every decision I made throughout this entire ordeal. Some nights, when sleep comes slowly, I think about that 15-second video, about the anonymous email that started everything, about the chain of events I set in motion, about whether I should feel guilty for what happened to Emma, to Kyle, to the Colonel. I don't. Not even a little. She made her choices when she decided 8 months of betrayal was worth more than 5 years of marriage. The Colonel made his when he brought violence to solve a problem that could have been handled with words. I just provided information and let consequences unfold naturally, organically, according to the principles of honor and loyalty that should govern how people treat each other. I raise my empty bottle toward the fading sunset. Speak quietly to the twilight, to loyalty. Ranger barks once, sharp, certain, affirming. I smile, the first completely genuine smile in over a year. Yeah, buddy. To loyalty, I reply. We walk together into the gathering darkness, two loyal companions moving forward, leaving the wreckage of broken vows and shattered trust far behind us where it belongs, where it can never touch us again.